same way. It took me a while, but I learned that if I wanted to be able to translate Toastmasters into my personal life, I had to figure out how to get through all that clutter and sort this stuff out in my brain and figure out how to get those butterflies in my stomach to fly in formation. And I did finally figure that out. And now I've been actually coaching people on public speaking and personal performance for the last 20 years, but it didn't come easy. It took a lot of learning and practice that I can now share some of these tips and tricks with you. Pardon me. Sorry. It's not a COVID cough, it's just a little cough, little tickle cough. Public speaking has always and will always be the #1 fear that people have. And this often definitely prevents people from A, joining Toastmasters, and from B, competing in contests. But tonight, I do have some tips and tricks to help you on not only getting into the written speech and into the delivery of the speech, but also how to do this now over Zoom. And I've had a little bit of practice now with the previous Zoom contests and then this coming up Zoom contest, which maybe some of you have as well. Is it holding you back? Are you stopping? Are you reluctant to put your hand up because you're thinking, I can't do that, or I'm not good enough? Or the one I hear a lot of is, why should I go in? The same people keep winning anyway. I bet you've heard that before, and maybe even thought that before. But you know, last year when I won the 2019 speech contest, I could have gone in with that same attitude, but I did not. Instead, I felt like I'd armed myself with some of these tips and tricks so that I could go into the contest feeling really, really confident in what I had produced. I don't know about you, but I love metaphors. You know what a metaphor is? Metaphor is giving life to an inanimate object. And unlike similes that have a direct comparison, metaphors bring action, bring color, bring a story to life. And that is what we really need a lot of in all of our stories and our speeches. And tonight I have a metaphor for you, big surprise. And that is that speech writing, much like life, is like building a jigsaw puzzle. There's many, many different ways to do it. But what if you thought there was only one right way? What if the only way you thought you could build a jigsaw puzzle was to maybe start from one end and move through the other? But a jigsaw puzzle is just like a speech. It has a frame, an outline. Some people start with the edges. I do. What do you start with in a jigsaw? I start with the edges because it creates a framework. That's the same as a speech. Some people might start with the sun. Or maybe in that jigsaw puzzle, there's a picture of a little boy and a big ball, and maybe people will start with building that. Or maybe they'll start with the red brick wall. But does it matter? It doesn't matter. There's no one right way to build a jigsaw puzzle. It doesn't matter in what order you put those pieces in. What matters is that all the pieces get put into the puzzle. And when that puzzle is done, you can look out across your masterpiece and see the big picture. That's what writing speeches is like. Tonight I have 8 tips. 8 tips. That was 7 fingers. It's better if you do it right. 8 tips on how to write and deliver a speech. The first 3 are kind of basic to all of you Toastmasters, but I'll review them anyway and go over the importance. The next 5 is the meat and potatoes. That's the inner part of the puzzle. The first piece of the puzzle is making the edges, making the outside framework. And that, to me, is your message. Your message is the meat behind your speech. It is what everything else needs to point to. And we at Circle of Gold know that if you cannot write your message on a little business card in 8 to 10 words, it's probably too long. So you need, pardon me, you need to be able to write your message, and that message provides the framework for your entire speech. In the speech that I won at the International Speech Contest at District 42, I started by writing a letter. And this is a little tip I'll give to you. I can take hours and hours and hours to write a speech, but I was listening to a masterclass podcast, and one of the masterclass teachers had said to write a letter, and this is last year, a couple years ago. So I wrote this letter, and the letter puts things from mind to paper a lot easier. At least it did for me, and it really worked. And my letter went something like this. Dear audience, when I give you this speech, what I want you to know is that those little feelings we get inside our stomach that we all have, we need to listen to them because they're important. Sometimes they can make the difference between life and death. Sometimes it can just bring a lot of joy and happiness. But whatever those little feelings inside your stomach are, learn to know them and learn to trust them, because one day you just might need it. So you see, that's not a message on one little business card, is it? No, that was the letter that I used to frame the start of what I wanted. What was the gift I wanted to give the audience? As I worked through this, and as you work through your concepts of your speeches, you want to get down to about 8 to 10 words or less of a message that is very, very clear. And if it is not clear to you, it's definitely not going to be clear to the audience. I won that 2019 contest, and I was beyond excited to win. I won not just because I had the most ridiculously, insanely crazy, once-in-a-lifetime, bizarre incident happen to me that made for a really good story, but I think I won because the audience was able to take away that key message. And to this day, I still have people walk up to me and tell me, "Hey, Val, you taught me to trust my gut." And that was the key message that I got down to from that letter, was to trust my gut. That's my tip to you. If you're looking to figure out, what am I trying to give the audience? What gift am I giving the audience? You might, and you're struggling with it, you might look at writing the letter, because that might help sort things out in your mind and get it from mind to paper. The second tip is to get all of those pieces of the puzzle all laid out in front of you. Some people call it a mind map. You've got all these different ideas, supporting stories, and maybe a thought or two, or some dialogue, or some descriptive words that you really want to use that you've heard somewhere before. Spread it all out and get it all organized there. Get it out of your head, get the clutter out of your head onto the paper. You can write it out on a computer. You can put it actually in a mind map on a piece of paper if you want it. But get that all out. Then write it. Just write it. Just write your speech. And you'll be surprised at the next step that I have for you. Because the next step I have that helps me move along in my speech writing is to print it in gigantic font, maybe 24 or 26, and read it out loud. Because step number 4 and on to the 8 steps is where you can really start to hone your speech. If you look at the judge's form, you'll see there's a huge percentage on, was the message clear? Well, that was step number 1. And delivery. Well, if we spend, like I used to spend, hours upon hours upon hours and hours and hours writing it, by the time I got to practice delivering it, I was so close to contest date or presentation date that I didn't leave myself enough time to be able to present and deliver the way I wanted to. So I had to work backwards and figure this out. So you write it out, and then you print it, and you start delivering it. This is why it works for me if I start delivering it out loud. I can deliver it in front of a mirror. I might deliver it to a bunch of pillows. I might deliver it down like I did a few nights ago on a park bench in a park. You're just delivering it because it's from that delivery that your true personality is going to shine through. And you take a pen with you, absolutely, and take a highlighter if you need to, and you write down where those natural words are coming out. The natural gestures that you're doing with your hands or your feet or your eyes, they're going to come out. Write them down, highlight them, put them in. If you look at our puzzle now, and we've got our puzzle that we're making, and we've got the outside built, and that's the message. And we've got the sun shining up above. We've got the little boy playing and bouncing the big ball. And we've got the red brick wall. Those red brick walls are the gestures. Those are the base of where all of our emotion and our movement and our connection is coming from, is that red brick wall. And in my analogy, the red brick wall has 3 sections, 3 different types of gestures. There's the conventional gestures. Does anybody know what the conventional gesture is? The conventional gesture, eye contact. We as Toastmasters, do we not get that kind of drilled into our heads on the importance of eye contact? Well, eye contact over Zoom creates a whole brand new challenge. But first I'll talk to you about just generalized eye contact. When we're in a room face-to-face with people, whether it be in a Toastmaster meeting, or if it's in a networking event, or maybe it's just a social gathering, there's right and wrong ways to make eye contact. Eye contact needs to linger, but not so long that you become creepy, because that can be challenging to some people. It can actually make you look and appear dishonest. It's the same as when some people point their fingers at someone and say, hey, you feel kind of like to step back. If you linger with eye contact too long, that's the same feeling you get. So what's the right amount? How does anybody know what the right amount is? I'll tell you what, there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. The proper amount of eye contact or length of time to hold eye contact is what works with you. It's usually about 3 or 4 seconds. And when I'm writing a speech and I'm practicing it out at the park bench, I am writing down where I'm changing eye contact to add the biggest impact. Usually it's at the end of a sentence where you've got a period. That's where you would change your focus and move on to someone else. This is in a face-to-face room, right? And oftentimes I will choose some people in a room, not necessarily based on the person, but based on where they're sitting. And I've marked that into my speech as well. So I know that I am looking over here, over here, over here, and over here. What do I get? I get all four of those different people thinking I'm talking directly to them. I'm making a connection with them. And also I'm looking around the entire room. Now in Zoom, that changes everything. Let me show you what this looks like in Zoom. And this is a what not to do. So here I am in my speech, and I am trying to make some eye contact. And so I look around, and this is what it looks like. Have you ever noticed that what the impact stories have on each other? Do you see how weird that looked? That was weird because I looked around. Or what if I was reading notes? This is what reading notes looks like. Body language, the facial expressions, the key to the meaning behind a message. That's what that looks like. And we don't really think of that when we're in behind Zoom, and we think just a little glance down at notes is going to be okay. That glance down actually looks like you're looking at your toes. And if you have a camera set too high and you're looking too high, or you have notes behind your camera, which some people do, in behind, this is what that looks like. It doesn't look like I'm looking at notes just behind the camera. That looks like I'm almost looking up at the sun, right? So what do we do in Zoom? I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've practiced Zoom for hours and hours and hours. And what I do so that I don't come across creepy and staring you down in the camera, such as this, is I move my head. My eyes are still looking at you, and each and every one of you thinks that I'm looking at you, and yet I'm looking at none. In a regular Toastmaster meeting, when we have all the tiles and we look like the Brady Bunch, it's hard not to look down at the tiles, and this is what that looks like. You see how I'm looking around? It's distracting. What you have to get over and practice is to look in the camera, even though all your people are behind you or down below you on the screen. Avoid that. Sometimes people are saying, hey, look at me. And you can say, yes, I see you. And really, you have no idea what they're doing. You just know that they're clapping or they're laughing, and you can clap and laugh with them, but you keep your eyes on the camera. Unless, of course, you're giving specific feedback to them for something that they actually need feedback for. That would be different. So eye contact. Conventional gestures are tricky, but you do need to practice them, okay? When I coach my clients, I do coach them on the 3 to 4 second rule, because they're not usually ever in speech contests, but they might be. And 3 to 4 seconds of holding eye contact, that's kind of the generalized rule of thumb, because in some cultures, eye contact and holding for any longer can be rather offensive. The next gesture is the descriptive gesture. That's the second part of the red brick wall, the descriptive gesture. What are descriptive gestures? Just what the name tells you. It describes it, such as the sun was a grapefruit, right? The words, the sun was a grapefruit, but your hands can now describe it. Now, when you are painting pictures with your hands, as well as with your words, and they match, that can be very powerful, very impacting. You want to visualize the shape of something, the size of something, a gigantic dinosaur with huge arms, or a dragon with wings as far out as you can possibly imagine. You paint that picture with dramatic, descriptive gestures. The descriptive gestures, it's like putting a bold and an underline and an exclamation mark to those words, when you can find your hands to enhance the words that you're saying. Using the gestures such as a way to show anger. Because gestures are about showing, not telling, right? You want to show them with a clenched fist that you're angry, with your facial expressions. Or maybe you want to talk soft, like a ghost, in one of your stories. I spoke before about the pointed finger. The pointed finger can come across as you're lecturing, but it also can be helpful if you're trying to make a point. And you can point, perhaps not at somebody, especially during Zoom because you can't see it anyway, but even in face-to-face, you point up, 2, 3. So pointed finger has its benefits. You have to know when and when not to use them. And the third section of the red brick wall for gestures is the emotional gestures. And what is that? That's your whole body movement, the whole body getting into the story. And you've seen stories like that where people are pretending to run, and they're running, and maybe they're running it like I am in slow motion. And it brings the audience right into the story, and you're able to run with them. Or maybe you're standing on the edge of a cliff and your legs are weak and you feel like, oh no, I hope I don't slip and fall or step back and lose my balance. And you bring in those gestures to bring in the audience into the emotion so that they can feel it. It does no good for us to tell someone how they feel. We have to show them and describe it. And that's called emotional gestures. So gestures are huge. Some people think gestures are just using your hands, putting your hands in your pockets. But you know what? We Toastmasters get told all the time, don't put your hands in your pockets. But sometimes your hands in your pockets need to be there for a purpose. Like maybe you're mad. And so you're just gonna put your hands in your pockets and stomp off the stage. So remember, hands in pockets isn't necessarily a bad thing. Gestures can add impact and they can also detract from the speech. But when you're practicing it out on the park bench, you know that you can let your personality shine through and see what happens, and you realize that, wow, I show anger pretty good when I jam my hands into my pockets. When you are moving, number 5 actually, point number 5, we hear all the time again, move with purpose. Moving with purpose is a huge part. We learned that in Toastmasters right from one of the very first 4 or 5 presentations we do. And you'll hear your evaluators a lot of the time talk about moving with purpose, going in a logical flow from left to right, maybe chronological order in years. But on Zoom, and that all works, in Zoom, you have to know something. Fast movements get lost. It's too fast, it's too busy. If I'm moving like this and like this and like this and like this in person, you guys would not be feeling car sick like you are right now. You'd be right with me getting bashed around on whatever I was on. But on a Zoom call and you're doing a presenting or delivering a speech or a contest speech, you need to make your movements much slower. It doesn't have to be slow like slow motion, but when you're moving from stage left to stage right, you're going to want to move about that speed. In real life, you'd move like this. It's a little fast because the camera can't keep up with you, especially depending on your bandwidth. That can change it too. So on Zoom, you want to be able to use all the stage. You can see yourself in the mirror or in the screen. You want to be able to put your hands out, have a little bit of space above your head, be able to see your waist and your body movements in case you need to do some of this or in case you're doing a jig or something like that. But pay attention to the speed in which you're doing this, the speed at which you are using your hands for your gestures. Another example is a waterfall. We can do a waterfall like this. That doesn't look good on Zoom. That looks terrible on Zoom. But a waterfall like this looks okay on Zoom. So you need to practice that. Turn on your own free Zoom account, practice. That's a very good thing to do for Zoom. Now, some tips and tricks to avoid. Remembering with gestures that they can enhance or distract from your message, your framework to your speech and your jigsaw puzzle, is you need to avoid the insincere gestures. And you do that by involving your whole body or the part of the body that's on the screen, such as, again, those hands in the pockets. And when you are, one of the tricks is to make sure, try to make sure that your facial expressions match your words. I'm sure you've seen that a lot. And over Zoom, it's very important because our facial expressions can get lost on the camera. And you want to really exaggerate them and be able to lean into the camera when you have an important point and be able to have those very important pauses at certain points in your speech to add that impact. When you don't do that, it becomes very distracting to audiences and you can lose them very, very easily. With the pauses, we can get uncomfortable with pauses, but pauses are, in my opinion, one of the most important pieces to that jigsaw puzzle. In that red brick wall, it is that final red piece to that brick wall, the pauses. And if you take nothing else from today's session, today's presentation from me, know that the pause can have the biggest change and impact to any speech and every speech. We pause before a punchline. We pause before you're going to make a certain point. We pause to create suspense and drama and bring the audience in, and they can't wait to know what you're going to say next. Now, I want you all, if you can, to open up your chat, and you can chat to the group and tell me some statements that you would put and where you would put the pause. And let's practice a little bit of that. I'll just give you a couple of minutes. Anybody? Maybe the chat has been disabled. Okay. Tip number 6. Show, not tell. That is, I love judging. Oh, we do have one. Let me back up. Okay. Marvin says he loves judging. So Marvin is presenting this and he's saying, oh man, you know what I love more than anything in the entire world? I love judging. That has a lot of impact because we're thinking he may be saying something else. And Lynette says, I feel so, how does she feel? Very grateful. When we are adding those pauses, you can see how it adds impact. Oh, we've got some more. Marg, I rushed to the door. When I shoved open the door, a monster waited on the other side. It was my husband. I just added that last one. You want the pause to come right before a twist, the twist that brings in the humor. Another one from Dan, knowledge and science, my favorite pastime to study. Oh, Daisy says, it is scary and funny. Okay, thank you everyone. I'll move right along. Puzzle piece number 6, show, not tell. We know that. That's one of the first things we're all taught in writing and in presenting. But you know what that is? Those are the metaphors. The metaphors. Why do we use metaphors? If this was an interactive group, you'd probably be telling me because it adds interest to the story. And I would say, you're right. Metaphors are really important, such as, he's a shining star. That's a metaphor. We talked about them at the beginning a little bit. The curtain of night fell upon us. Or again, the sun was our grapefruit. We are using those metaphors to really help us demonstrate that show, not tell. I remember a couple of years ago, my husband and I and our son Dustin were out hiking, and we came to the top of this cliff, and it was a bit of a ridge hike from then on. A ridge hike is when you look down one way and you see 2,000 feet down. You look down the other way and it's another 2,000 feet down. And for me, I'm terrified of heights. I got up there, my legs felt like overly wet noodles. They were shaking. I had this overwhelming urge to just pitch myself off the edge of the cliff to get myself out of that situation. And I said to my husband, "Oh, Gary, I'm terrified. I am scared." And he turned to me and he said, "No, you're not." "No, I'm not." I can tell you there was no gesture, nor word, no body language or anything that could better describe what I wanted to do to him at that exact moment. It's important for us to know that we cannot tell our audiences how to feel. We can only give them the words. We can show them through the words that we use so that they can feel it themselves. We want them to feel it themselves. When I gave my speech that won the district, the crazy, outrageous story that no one's ever heard of before that was just so good was that our 7-month-old son was kidnapped out of my arms while we were on a vacation in Southeast Asia. The message to my speech was to trust my gut, because I trusted my gut. And after many, many minutes, I was able to find him and get him back. But when I was giving this speech, the words I used to describe how I felt brought the audience in so much that there were people shaking in the audience, there were people crying, there was men crying, because they were feeling the same feeling I was feeling. And I nailed it when I was able to bring that kind of emotional and conventional gesture into match the words that I had on paper and bring it and show them how I felt in that moment, having a baby kidnapped out of your arms, out of my arms. What are the benefits of using these metaphors? The benefits are that they help the audience connect even deeper to your message, to the outside frame, the framework of your jigsaw puzzle. They help them feel they help the speech topic to become more real. So even if you're not talking about an emotional speech, you might be talking about a technical speech, you still can bring in metaphors to help people understand really what you were talking about there. You need to make sure, again, that you, just to top off, you need to make sure that you match your gestures and your eye contact and your emotions to the words that you're saying. Sometimes, I'm sure you've heard people say, "You were smiling when you told the audience that you felt sad," or "You had a grin on your face when you said you were angry." If you're saying you're angry, don't say, "I was so angry, I picked up a brush and threw it against the wall." You say something along the lines of, "She picked up, or I picked up the brush and hucked it against the wall." Now I've shown you that the emotion I had with that hairbrush was anger. They didn't tell you I was angry. I'm letting you decide if I was angry or not, and be there with me. Here's some examples of how this affects a sentence. I was outside bouncing the ball against a brick wall. That's okay, that's pretty descriptive. How about this? The sun was in the sky. I was outside bouncing the ball against the brick wall. Getting a little better. The sun was high in the sky. I was outside bouncing the big ball against the brick wall. But what about this? I was outside The sun was a grapefruit, high in the sky. The little boy took the big bouncy ball and threw it against the red brick wall. Much better. Were you there with me? Outside in the park, or looking at our puzzle of the sun and the big blue ball and the red brick wall, and the little boy playing. In my Trust My Gut speech, I had just arrived in Thailand, and everybody was going nuts over this tiny little baby who had porcelain white skin. And see if you can pick out the metaphors in this sentence. We went out for a walk one day. The sun was a grapefruit, high in the sky. We stepped out of our hotel. The streets were alive with festivities. People were jammed shoulder to shoulder, thousands of them, with a crazy flower festival. It was chaos. Gary pushed Bridget in a stroller. I carried the little cherub Dustin in my arms. Put in the chat box if you can think of some of there's 3 metaphors that were used in that paragraph. I gave you one, I've given it 3 times. I think you'll all get that one. Yeah, cherub, I didn't give you that one. That was, Lynette got that. Sun is a grapefruit, Laurel, good. The little cherub, yep. And the streets were alive, that was another one. The streets were alive. That's another metaphor you can picture. It was alive with festivities, and you can just imagine how busy and crazy it was on the streets of Thailand. Yes, very good. All right, puzzle piece number 7. The voice, your voice, your voice. Your voice is one of the most amazing instruments that you have, and use it as a tool. We hear all the time, use your voice, go louder, go softer. But your voice is so much more than that. Your voice can add impact through pace, through pitch, through rate, and through volume. Pacing, you might be able to use your voice to make the point that you're stepping across stones or rungs of a ladder or something along that line. Use it almost like a rhythm. You can use your pace to go really, really fast to create the anxiety in someone. Like in my speech, when I was charging down the street looking for my baby and I could not see anything, I looked through t-shirt, store after store after store, t-shirts, watches, gadgets. There was nothing. He was nowhere. Or you can use the pace of your speech to also draw impact when you talk softly and slowly at the same time, such as in my speech when I said, Dustin was gone. He's gone. At first, I felt none. Then I felt nothing at all, as if the world had stopped spinning and mine just had. Do you see how that change in pace really, and voice really added impact to the speech? And I took you from really, really fast to really slow and quiet and brought you through the emotion of being on that crazy festival street in Thailand when time for me stood still. So use your voice to go faster, to go slower. You can have pitch to go higher. You can have it go lower, your register your lower. For women, it can be quite a challenge for us to get our register lower, especially when we're nervous. We get our voices up there a little bit high and a little bit breathy. And I struggle with this lots of times. And I try to remember how to bring your voice into a conversational tone. Easier said than done. How do you do that? Bring it down into the diaphragm and start low. I'd rather start my speech on a lower register and go up than find myself up here and have to figure out mid-speech how to get low, my register lower. It's a little easier for men. They seem to have a little, well, they do. They have a lower register in voice, so it makes it a little easier for them to stay there. And I talked about the pause and how important the perfect pause is. So that's good. Now some Zoom tips and tricks. With Zoom, you need to have really good lighting. That's what I have right now. Lighting is hard. You need to practice. If you're going in a contest, practice at the time of day you're going to give your presentation, or if you're giving a presentation like I am tonight, practice way ahead of time so you know what the lighting situation is going to be like. I'm actually at an Airbnb. I'm in a very unstable internet environment. I am propped up right now outside in the living room, and I found this little light to go over top. So a little light source, small light source, over top behind your camera to bring the light onto you and not light behind you is really important. And that's what I did. I practiced. I've set this, it took me about 3 hours to set this up over the last 3 or 4 days. I'm out here in Vancouver right now. The next thing is, you need a lot of makeup. I have so much makeup on right now that if I stood on a street corner, it wouldn't be good. That's how much I have on. It's a lot, but it doesn't look like that much on camera. Men as well. If you have light facial hair like eyebrows and eyelashes, if you want your facial expressions, I know this sounds weird to you, but if you want your facial expressions to be seen on camera at work, on Zoom, or in speeches at Toastmasters over Zoom, you need to somehow get some light and definition to your eyes. Now, eyebrows are very important. Where's my eyebrows? There we go. Eyebrows are very important. Here's why. If I don't have these eyebrows painted on as dark, then you are never really going to see this type of eye control that I have, and expression. Because if I'm opening up my eyes really wide, what you're really seeing is my eyebrows raise. So trick, get the eyebrows on. And men, if you need your wife to put in a few colors of brown on your eyebrows so that your eyebrows can show your eye expression, do it. No one else is going to notice on screen except that you have good facial expressions. So you want to definitely put makeup on. Standing. Do you stand or do you sit? Well, when you stand, you have to try not to rock back and forth or rock back and forth. Remember I spoke about moving too fast? Well, rocking back and forth is very common in a Zoom meeting. So if you're going to stand, plant your feet firmly on the ground, and you can move, like I said, not too fast. All I'm doing is between feet. I'm not actually picking my feet up at all. You can move forward and you can move back for impact, but try to avoid the rocking. Looks like you're rocking a baby here, or rocking this way. It looks like you're on a boat. Make people car sick. And standing gives you more flexibility to add more gestures, but I find that it also brings the speaker into their speech more than if they were presenting it sitting down. That's important. So lighting, the way you're standing, and then your camera angle. A lot of people have the camera angle too low, and what we end up seeing is the spotlight above their head or their ceiling. You want the camera, camera to be a little bit above your eye level. So right here's my eye level. My camera is about that much higher. It's about maybe an inch higher than my eyes. And that way, when I'm looking into the camera, I am not appearing like I'm looking up, which is what it would look like now if I'm looking into the camera and it's too high for me, right? So, and too low would be like this. And now I'm looking down, and that's no good. So really practice, turn on the Zoom, start your own Zoom meeting all by yourself. You can do it, it's a free account. Turn it on, set up your camera, set up your lighting, talk to yourself, look at yourself, see that all your hands can fit inside the frame, mark it out on, on the floor if you need to, and you can present that way. You want to check your audio. Your audio settings are all in Zoom. There's a little white or little arrow next to the video camera. Again, my non-COVID cough is driving me crazy. there's a little arrow next to the video camera on Zoom, and you can change your audio levels in there, because you do need to check it. A personal story, I have my audio and my video settings set always the same. And one day I went into a Zoom call and someone said, I can't hear you very well. You're really faint. I went into that arrow, and sure enough, for some reason the volume was down. I didn't switch it. It just happened that way. Okay. Number 8. What do you think number 8 is? Puzzle piece number 8. So you've got the framework. You've built all the pieces. You've got the gestures in the red brick wall. You've got the tips and tricks, which is the little boy with bouncing the blue ball. And you've got the metaphors and the voice and all the gestures and body language. Up in the sun was a grapefruit. Now you have all this. And what is that final piece? You know that feeling you get when you build the puzzle and you're almost there at the end and you have one last piece and it feels good because you know you're going to get it. That last piece, practice. It's practice. You've got to practice. Leave yourself lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of time to practice. And then when you think you've practiced enough, practice it again and again and again. And that's one of the things that people really get hung up on, is they forget to practice enough. And maybe a day before the speech, they think, well, I've got it written pretty good. Maybe I should start saying it out loud. And they fail to practice enough. So practice, practice, practice. Now, when you have done all of this, you will have that finished puzzle, that feeling that you have when you have got your entire puzzle piece all together and you've finished it. And tonight, you've learned about the gestures. You've learned about the impact that voice can have and the pauses can have. You've learned about using your voice for rate and pitches and the value of metaphors. There's a whole bunch of things you've learned. But once you have this puzzle piece, I hope you can see that it doesn't matter what order you put all the puzzle pieces in. What matters is they all got in there. And when you stand back and you look at your masterpiece and you can admire just how the sun was a grapefruit in the sky and that little boy bouncing a ball against that red brick wall, you know that you have got a complete picture. And then, knowing that, armed with all of that, when you go into the next contest and you do feel overwhelmed and like too much clutter going on in your head, just be confident that you have all the pieces to that puzzle. And those butterflies in your stomach, they will start to fly in formation. Madam Toastmaster.
I like how we ended with the butterflies in the stomach, because I think that's how we all started on this journey. Thank you so much for that, Valerie. If it's okay with you, Valerie, could I open the floor for some questions?
Sorry. Yes, absolutely. Q&A.
Great.
Let's do it.
Does anyone have any questions for Valerie?
No.
I have a question for you, Valerie. What is it that inspires you to continue competing? I know the speeches I've heard you give are very inspiring, so I'd like to think you do it to inspire others. But is there a reason why you keep competing? Because you're good.
Thank you. You know, thank you, Lynette. I like competing because I like to challenge myself. And I like challenging myself because I feel like we always have room to grow. And when I go into a speech contest, I usually have something in my mind of something I'm trying to master. And that just stepping outside of my comfort zone, like anyone else going into these speech contests, gives that level of anxiety, extra level of anxiety that makes me step up to the plate a little bit more. So I keep going in these contests for two reasons. One, because I have lots of weird life stories to share with people. And I do like to make an impact on other people. But the biggest thing is so that I can actually keep growing as an individual and as a speaker. I use it all the time in my personal business as well.
Thank you for that. Laurel.
Val, when it was decided that there was this pandemic going on and we couldn't have real live contests, and all the discussion was going on about, and you had already competed at club and won, and then they didn't know what they were going to do for area. Was there any time that you said, I don't want to compete this year, I'm afraid of Zoom, I don't want to do this, I just want to wait till this pandemic is over and get back to live? Was there any time, or did you just jump into it and go, I don't care what the format is, I'm doing this?
Okay, I totally cared what the format was. I was not afraid to learn Zoom, not one little bit. It didn't intimidate me. It didn't scare me. That is just another thing to learn how to do. It's like learning how to play a new sport. That did not bother me. I 100% with every single grain of my body was opposed to these contests going forward. 100%. Because I felt like the optics to the rest of the world was horrible. That was my personal opinion at the time. These decisions were being made, or these conversations were happening when it was still 2 weeks. I felt literally sick to my stomach that there was so much emphasis being put on a contest when there are people out there, man, oh man, they're struggling for their jobs, they're worried about their family. I was embarrassed. But had that same conversation happened a month later, that would have been a completely different story. By then, people had their lives kind of sorted out, which is what ended up happening during contest time anyway. But their lives would have been more sorted out. They would have figured out how to continue working with kids at home and then be able to focus their efforts and their time and their extra time on things like Zoom contests. So for me, I was lucky. I always worked from home. This was no change for me. When I was opposed to it going forward, it was never about, oh, I'm afraid of Zoom or anything. It was always about how I think we could be putting our efforts and all our volunteer time into helping people navigate this weird time. However, that's then, this is now, and I'm so glad it went forward, and everyone's learned really a lot from it, and we've all been able to incorporate it into our, most of us have been able to incorporate it into our personal lives. So it's been a big opportunity for people to join contests that wouldn't normally have. And on the other hand, we've lost a few people too, but it's been very, very rewarding and beneficial to District 42, I think.
Thank you very much.
We have a question in the chat. Valerie, when you speak, do you turn on speaker view or gallery view? All audience are black screen during the contest. What's your recommendation?
So Daisy asked that question. When I speak, I have it on speaker view, but in the video settings, when you're setting it up, if you check off the box that says spotlight my video when speaking, then whoever is speaking is the ones that's on, you're spotlighting your own video when you're speaking. You only see yourself. That's how I like setting it up. I like to be able to see myself. I'm not looking at myself, like I said. I'm looking at the camera, and you all think I'm looking at each individual one of you. But I like it so that when I go back here, I know that I'm in the camera screen still. I know that if I go like this, like, whoops, that's too far, and I can get back. If I don't get to see that, then I'm probably, quite possibly, going to walk right off the stage by accident. You can use the stage in Zoom for impact. On one of the speeches I was practicing, I was going to come up like this and climb up like that. Is anybody up there? Anybody? Anybody? I was going to use the camera like that. And you can do that in a Zoom contest.
Thank you for that. Another question that actually came up in a meeting I had earlier today was, it seems to be that we have the regular competitors, and they're going to compete all the time. As a veteran competitor, how do you address trying to encourage newer members or first-time competitors to jump in the ring?
I think that what in Toastmasters, there's a lot of, and contests, there's a lot of emphasis on winning. So I'm a competitive golfer, and I rarely win. I golf against maybe a field of 120 women. Imagine if everyone that went into that golf tournament said, I'm not going to go in because I can't win, or I'm not going to be good enough. There'd be no tournament. So I go into contests, and I encourage everybody to go into contests, not because you want to win. You go in because you want to share your story. You want to get better at connecting with the audience and being able to use these skills that we learn in Toastmasters as transferable skills into our outside world, into our business, our relationships at home, our relationships with friends or teachers or even children. And use the contest as a way to challenge yourself, to step outside that comfort zone box that you're in and be able to present that way. Don't worry about it if you're winning or not, right? Because not everyone's going to win the golf tournament. Not everyone's going to win the tournament. And someone once said to me, an elite runner said to me, that every day is a different day. When you compete today, it's going to be 100% different than how you compete tomorrow, because everything changes. Maybe the way you slept is going to be more favorable or less favorable or whatever. So you don't worry about that stuff. You just go, and you go to the circle of gold to practice, to hone your speech and get better and better and better, and get some little tidbits so that you can feel really comfortable when you're standing in front of the camera. Whatever happens, happens. And I always encourage new people and seasoned Toastmasters to enter contests, because it just forces those veteran winners to do better and you to do better, right?
Well, thank you for that. I think the message is everybody grows, and so everybody wins at some level just by putting their hat in the ring. You're going to learn something. So thank you. Are there any other questions before we go to break? Hearing none, I would like to thank Valerie Erikson for attending this and being patient with us. And I commend your experience and you sharing that with us here tonight. Could everyone please give Valerie a round of applause?
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We invite you to stick around after break if you would like. We're going to have a 5-minute break, and we will return here. If everybody's back before 5 minutes, we'll start again. And then we're going to hear from the District 42 Chief Judge, Marvin Henry. So stay tuned. We'll see you back when you get here. Okay, I would like to welcome everybody back from our break and the very lively discussions. I see somebody put in the chat that Valerie should do a Zoom makeup tutorial. And what the hey, what else do we have to do in these times of Zoom than sit here and put makeup on for a camera? As I mentioned earlier, we are very privileged tonight to have District 42 Chief Judge Marvin Henry to discuss about judging in contests. And he is going to speak about them, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. So please help me welcome District 42's Chief Judge, Distinguished Toastmaster, Marvin Henry.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to this session and talking about judging and chief judging. First of all, I'm not wearing any makeup today. And I was born in Vancouver and been staying in a lot of different Airbnbs when Nadine and I go back to visit my mom and my mom. So I'm good looking. Yeah. Fun fact number 3, before I get into this then, is the first time I saw Nadine was at a contest. She was competing, actually. I wasn't judging, but she was competing. And then that was the first time I saw her. But move on to judging now. I was going to talk about the judging forms. I got 8 points myself, 1 for each judge. There's 7 judges at a division contest at least. That's in the rule book, and at least 7 in District 2. That's also in the rule book. And a tiebreaker judge has 8 judges, and 9 chief judge would be 9, but the chief judge does not judge, as you all know. So that's 8 points, 8 judges. Also, every speaker should know the judging forum, just like Connie mentioned in the session there. Should know the judging forum. Val mentioned that too in point number 1 as well, because the judging forum is all about the message. 55 points are in content for both table topics and humorous speech contests, and similar to the spring and international as well. So looking at the judging forum right now, 55 points are in content for both table topics and the humorous speech contest. That's more than half of your material is in content. That's your message, how effective it is, how much value the speech does, and the audience response. So it's not actually what you tell, it's how you tell it. So if you look at the last district contest, and Val came second, Connect came first. Now Connie was mentioning about lighting and money and stuff, and the only thing that both Val and Connect had in common was practice, practice, practice. I know I've talked to both of them, and both of them practice, I would say, many hours a day to get to that point. I'm not sure who practiced more, but I know both of them practice a lot, and both had good lighting. And Val, you just heard Val's story, Connect's story. He just keep practicing and got a lot of advice, and until her lighting was correct. And she did it in her kitchen where the light was best, and it didn't cost her much money to get that light in her kitchen, of course. So it's not about the money or the audio or anything like that. It's about the practice, 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 and getting that message out to your audience. With all those 8 points that Val mentioned, you got to get that message to the audience. The audience has to connect with every single word you say, every single gesture you make, every single story you tell. It has to be memorable. I mean, after each contest, I can tell you what the winner said and what the winner's message was. I can go home and tell my Nandini, or tell my mom on the phone, or tell Nandini's mom, which I usually do, what the message is, because I know it, because I've heard it, and it won, and it resonated in my head, in my brain, and it made me feel good all over, and that's why that person won. I'm going back to my favorite thing, judging. The best thing about a contest is picking the winner, and only judges pick the winner. So if you after Val won her contest, and I came home that day and I said, guess what I did? I picked the winner. So it feels always good to pick a winner in contests. So that's one reason why I love judging, because you always get a chance to pick the winner. You don't always pick the winner, of course, but you get a chance to pick who wins, and being involved in that aspect is rewarding. I learned that a long time ago, that my niche is in judging, and I love picking the winners or top 3, and therefore I've been judging for over 15 years and been chief judging now for over 15 years, because I find the best part of it is picking the winner. Any member can judge, as you all know. Once you're a paid member, you're qualified to be a judge, and then up to area level, you have to get 6 speeches, of course, on your belt. So it doesn't take much to be a judge. You just be a Toastmaster for 6 months and get your 6 speeches, and you can judge right up to district. And that's the fun part, because once you start judging, you have no limit where you can go. You can judge every contest. You can pick all the winners. You can interact with all the people, and you can see and learn from every speaker you see and listen to. Getting back to the judging form. For table topics and for most contests, the first part is speech development, right? So it's always the speech development in your speech, your opening body conclusion, your 3 points if you have 3 points, your message, how it's broken up and how it's presented throughout the speech, all about speech development. Because people like to know a good opening, get engaged, get attracted, get the person's attention in the first few minutes before you say Madam Toastmaster. You gotta engage that audience and make sure you get their attention. Once the body starts going, you gotta keep the person engaged all the way through, keep them on suspense. You know, right where when Val mentioned those emotional gestures and moving with purpose, you got to keep the audience in suspense and keep them on their toes so they're always on the ball and engage your speech. The second part is on your ballot is effectiveness. How effective is that speech? And that's both for humorous and tip topics. And for table topics, effective means is the question answered, and the question answer for it that we can understand it and understand a good answer that we can both connect to and relate to. Today I was at a contest, table topics contest. There was a question on what do you learn in the COVID restrictions? We had completely different answers, but I was able to relate to all 3 speakers. And even though they came from different angles and what they learned from the COVID restrictions, I was able to relate to them. And the thing about Toastmasters, we have many good speakers. The judging form comes in very good, and excellent. So we have many good speakers, very few fair, some very good, and some excellent. So you got to think of that when you're judging and when you're competing, that all the speakers out there are good, at least good. So when you hear 9 speakers or 4 speakers or 3 speakers today, they're all good. But one or two may be very good, and one or two may be excellent, and that's the judging form is set out. So the top people come out on top and win, and it's not always the same person. I've seen many different winners in district because it's not always the same person. The same person does not always win, but the best speaker always wins, and that could be anyone in the district. Any member who competes can be that best speaker. I've seen it several times, many times, when a new Toastmaster becomes the best speaker, and that new Toastmaster wins the contest and moves on to the next level or next level. So I've covered speech development, how effective it is. Speech value is next. The speech has to be value, something that we could all relate to, something that's valuable to the member. We want to learn, we want to grow from the speakers. We don't want to listen to a bunch of babble or gobbledygook or a story that doesn't make sense or that's unbelievable. You want to learn from a story that we can relate to, grow from, has a message we can learn, message that we can tell someone else, and that person can say, wow, that's a good message. So it has to have value to the speaker, value to the audience. So remember those things, friends. The message has a good speech development, has to be effective for the person, and also good value. The next thing is delivery, of course. Now, 30% of the speech at the objection form is on delivery. That's almost half. So the top two things are content and delivery, of course. And that's why you see a lot of speakers do very well in delivery and end up winning the speech and the contest, because the content was similar to the next person, but the edge out in delivery. In the World Championships this past August, Mike Carr came first. Now, personally, I don't like his content, but I'm sure a lot of judges did. But he did have very awesome delivery, and he used that Zoom screen to his advantage. I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, but the very first 5 seconds, he was in the corner of his screen. I can't even do that right now. I don't know how to do it. I'm not going to try. But he was in the corner of his screen, and he came out with only his head showing off the right or left corner, depending how you look at it. My left corner, I guess, his right. And that was amazing. When I first saw that, I thought, what is he doing? And then he continued to use that Zoom screen to his advantage, doing all sorts of things in that Zoom screen that no one else in that contest ever did. And that alone gave him the edge on delivery. His content was also very good. He had a dialogue of two people, one on his shoulder, his teacher and another person. It's a positive thoughts, negative thoughts. And those two dialogues, positive, negative, added to his story. So that had a good part on his speech development and his effectiveness and his speech value. So there you go. He had everything in his speech. He had the delivery all set in this Zoom screen. He had the content with his two characters, positive, negative characters. And he had dialogue in his speech, so it was effective. It was good content. It was value, and it's good delivery. The last 15% is appropriateness and correctness on table topics form. Again, appropriateness and correctness on the humorous speech form too. So your words have to be appropriate, and correct. Always the choice of words is important. You don't want to use words like great or so or are or good. You want to use words that we can connect to. Words that stand out, words that you would use, and not only in your daily language, but words that we may not hear too often, that are good descriptive words, good adjectives, and good words that you connect to, that stand out, that we can relate to. And that's important too, being appropriate and also the correct use of words throughout your speech. Every word counts. A lot of people write out their speech and then goes through that speech again and change each word to make sure that it counts. And that happens a lot in Circle of Gold too. When I've been to Circle of Gold sessions, the Circle of Gold people, members or participants, help format those words to make every word count, because every word does count in a speech, and that covers in the last 2 points of how appropriate it is and how correct it is, because some words are better than other words in each speech. In describing your message, or describing your story, or describing any part of your story, each word does count, and it makes a difference. I noticed one of the things I noticed, but in a contest, every judge is different. The winners resonate to the top, of course. The top three resonate to the top. But you notice, when I noticed as a chief judge, a ballot counter type person I am, there is points all over the scoreboard. Because every judge hears the story differently. Every judge hears the speech differently. So you don't always get 9 judges, 8 judges picking the same person to win. Right? You get or part this, part that. So it's harder to say, because every time I've seen it, it changes. So you got to make sure that your story only stands out, but resonates with some of those judges. So you do make it to the top, not to every judge, but to the majority of the judges. Therefore, you come up on top 3. I would like to turn over the floor and answer some questions on the judging form, and maybe answer any questions people may have. So I'd like to take a break, stop for a second of talking, and answer any questions that you may have for now. Can somebody read the chat to me? I'm not good at reading chat at the same time as us.
We got it here, Marvin. We do have a question.
Okay, thank you.
The question is, if I modify previous contest speech, how does the judge feel about the repeated speech?
Okay, that I always had a problem with. Now I'm in technology. I'm a techo guru. I do tech. Learning Zoom was awesome. I have Zoom before, and getting to Zoom was Zoom. I learned it very quick, and now, as you know, I do all the Zoom accounts. So I like new things. I buy a new cell phone every 2 or 3 years. I like to buy new things. I like new things, like new TV shows. So I like new speeches, and I like to hear new speeches. I get tired of hearing the same speech over and over again, and so I personally like a new speech. But on the other hand, that is not in the judging rule book. It doesn't say in the rule book it has to be a new speech. It doesn't say in the rule book you cannot do the same speech over and over. And some people like Wes Dantu and like Valerie Erikson and like Kanak like to take the speech and hone it and get it better and better. Now Wes has done that several times, and Wes Dantu, as you know, has won the most district contests in our district, and he has been a master of making his speeches better every year. So even though I heard his speech before, it does get better every year, and it does make a difference. So I even though a lot of judges like myself like new speeches and hearing new stories, it does make a point when a speaker can make a speech better this time around than last time, with better stories, better words, better gestures, better emotions, and everything about the speech is better. So therefore, that speech could win this time and not last time. That answer the question?
I hope so. If not, I'm sure she'll respond here. We have another statement in here. The judge needs to judge on the speech that day and not think about the past. You're right, there's no rules, and I don't know what SG means, but there's none of that either. And this shouldn't affect scoring. That's a statement there.
That is correct. That's
okay.
Right.
I'm hoping you can address something that does get mentioned, and it was touched on during the break, is the attire people wear, the makeup, and things like that. How does that get judged on?
You got to move with purpose and dress with purpose. Your attire or dress, your outfit, has to support your message. And so people can relate to a message that's supported by a person who is wearing clothes to support that message. And you can do that in two ways. Now, if you have a story and your story is a professional type story, and you could look professional. If your story is about clowns, you can wear a clown outfit if you like. And I've seen that done at a humorous speech contest before. In fact, one of when I first joined Toastmasters back in the 90s, one of the top humorous speech contests was a baby speech story. So a guy wore diapers and a baby outfit, and he won his contest. So his outfit was a baby with diapers, very unprofessional, but his outfit supported his message, therefore he won.
Thank you for that, Marvin.
So,
I think
yeah,
that sounds good. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm sure if you have any questions, you can contact Marvin, and he is available through D42. Do you have an email address on D42 as Chief Judge?
Yes, so the email address is contest@d42tm.org. That's contest with an S, d42tm.org. That goes to myself, goes to Saya, which is the contest chair. It goes to Ryan, who's the program quality director, and all, us three are involved and responsible for all the contests in the district. So that's where it goes to.
Thank you very much, and I pasted that in our chat. I would like everyone to please turn on their videos if they feel comfortable, because this is in recording. And let's please give our Chief Judge, Marvin Henry, a round of applause. Thank you so much, Marvin, for coming this evening.
One last point is yes, we're all looking for, all the contests are looking for judges. I've been getting calls and emails every day about judges. So I would expect each one of you may get an email soon. Make sure you say, if you can, say yes to the email. Yes, I can judge, and follow up with your area director or division director, your club president or vice president, or myself, and come out and judge at these contests. If you can't judge, there's always room for ballot counters, timers, and Sergeant Arms, Toastmasters, of course.
So that is a call to action if I ever heard one. So please reach out. So thank you very much. We had two great presenters this evening, and I just want to wrap up by going through what is coming up. And I have a huge announcement. Huge. This is how you use your camera for emphatic emphasis. Right, Valerie? I'm going to share my screen. Come on, share. So thank you to Valerie and Marvin for coming this evening. Coming up next, at the next Circle of Gold Plus, where we will only have one meeting room, which is what I kind of thought we had, but it's all going to go smoothly because we're planning on that. And we are going to have Laura Chambers coming, talking about how to find your funny bone. That's on October 15th. She has won numerous humorous speech contests in division and district. We're looking forward to having her. Following that, we are having Connie Pause, our very own Connie Pause, who's in the room tonight, who's going to give us tips for table topics. Again, Connie is an expert, if I've ever seen one, in table topics. She's competed many times, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. Then we're having Iris Talbot coming to talk about vocal variety. I saw Iris's speech, I think it was in Moose Jaw, And she was up on stage singing in this beautiful operatic voice. I don't think she expects us to do that, but she most certainly is going to teach us other things that we can all use in providing vocal variety. Following that, last week we had a video that didn't go so well. So we're bringing in Lance Miller. Lance Miller is going to be here on the 25th of November to discuss about competition speaking in the International Speech Contest, and we have lined him up. And so even though the video didn't work, he has agreed to come in and do his presentation live from Glendale, California. And that is on November 25th. So more information will be coming about that. This is the Circle of Gold Plus, so you can only expect that things are going to there's going to be more surprises in the works in the coming year. So I encourage everyone to come out and visit Circle of Gold Plus. I did promise anyone tonight, if they did bring any speeches that they're working on, that they could present them, and I will be staying an extra 15 minutes if anybody wants to stay because of the little issue we had earlier. Are there any questions about any of this? I don't see any hands up, any comments, feedback. I like Lance Miller. I like him too. I met him in Medicine Hat, I believe, and he inspired me. So I appreciate him. Anything else? I forgot you mentioned him. Thanks, Dan. I will. Yeah, if there's no other comments, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. Share the word about Circle of Gold Plus. This is, even though this is sponsored by Division B's leading team, the BLT Advanced Club, and Division B, I do believe in the one-team approach. We are all District 42, and I highly encourage you to invite your members to come out to Circle of Gold Plus, where we're going to learn new things all the time and have special guests. And yes, we are reviewing the registration process, Connie, and Marvin still likes Lance Miller. Okay. Mark.
I just wanted to mention, for if you haven't had enough about contests yet, and maybe your club's getting anxious about going into contests, on October 5th at the regional club meeting, we are actually having Randall Edge come in and talk about technology. And last year's Chief Judge, Lynette Theriot, is coming to talk to the regional clubs. I would extend an invitation to any other clubs that are interested. Just drop myself an email and I'll send you the link.
Thank you for that, Mark. I have had a request to review the registration process. Along with my working committee, we are going to review this after what happened this evening. And again, this is a learning, this is something where, this is my HPL, I'm supposed to learn things. So working, and I will be sending information out to all of you after I discuss with our tech team and my working committee on how we're going to improve this. Again, my apologies, but if we don't have any hiccups, we're not going to learn. So thank you all for your patience in helping me grow, and I'll be in touch with all of you. Are there any other questions or anything? Is that your hand up, Marvin?
Yeah, thanks, Lynette. I just put in the chat there. I'm having a judges training on October 3rd at Saturday night, 7 to 9 p.m. A lot of their area directors were asking for it, so I'm putting one on. The first hour will be judges training, and the second hour will be a mock tabletopist contest. I'm looking for volunteers to take part in the contest as contestants or ballot counters, timers, sergeant arms, and you can register on the D42 website.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. And I'm sorry, what day is that again, Marvin?
This coming Saturday, October 3rd at 7 to 9 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments or announcements? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, everyone. You are so welcome, Catherine. Having had an enjoyable evening with all of you, I want to give special thanks again to Valerie Erikson, Marvin Henry, and my team, Dan Lone Child, Laura Wingert, and we had a few others in here who disappeared that were on my team. But I want to give everyone a great thank you, and I'll see you on the 15th. Have a good evening, everyone.